Okay, so here's the second part where we picked up before, and you guys all have this. The only thing I'm going to point out is what I did for the box height is, we know that the low sensor and the high sensor are kind of coincidence, but we always know that we see a low sensor box, no matter what size box it is. I guess if it is no box in a pallet, that might be different, but maybe that's a good thing to put on the final. But we're always going to see a low box, so we're going to send that through a one-shot. And that's going to be a strobe that'll say, okay, check the box height when you see that pulse. So we're looking at both for the low box, it's yes, low box, no high box, and then it's both of them for the high box. And then we just go through transfer based on high box, low box. And here for the transfer, we're turning it off when we get to the entry point of our conveyor. We're turning the conveyor on at the same time, but we're keeping that on all the way until it gets to the remover done, and that's when we're fully done with the box. It's disappeared. And then we keep the remover signals on until we get the end of cycle pulse. Now, for the rest of this, what we have to do is say, okay, at what point do we say we have a remover on there? And if we look at this, again, we're saying the remover, we're going to keep this latched on, and when that at exit sign signal goes high right there, so they're both high right there, that's when we're going to say we're done. And so that circuit is just going to be, so it's when we're at the exit, so there's at the exit, and when we have the remover bit also. Sure be nice if the Allen Bradley would cooperate a little better. And then it doesn't matter what, they're going to be a parallel branch because it'll either be left or right. So we can then say at the right exit and the right mover bit. And what we're going to do here again, now this is going to be a little bit different than what we had before because the signals go both high and low. So we're going to want to make sure that we're looking at the rising edge to be sure. And so what we're going to do is we're going to grab our available, we want to grab our available bits. That's our memory bit. And that's the bit that we're going to use that say, hey, that is when we are done with the output bit is going to say that's the remover done signal. So we're going to bring that down and use our remover done signal. And again, that's just a one shot. It's only going to be there for one scan. And what we're going to do there is we're going to go and we're going to put in our counter circuit. And for our counter circuit, we're also at the same time we're going to bring that over here, and then we'll move it into our output integer. So we're going to move, well, first let's set up our counter, and that'll be C50. Now our preset, we don't really care, so we'll just make it a really big number. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move the, and remember, and a couple people, it's nothing major, but remember, you're trying to move the accumulator. You're not trying to move just C5 colon 0. So this will be going into our integer, and that's our box count. And then, at the same time, we're also going to take that same signal, the remover done signal, and we're going to use that to set up our timer that we're going to use to actually time out the second box. So we're going to put a timer in there. We'll make that T4.0 or colon 0, and the time base here. Now, I never liked using 1 second as a time base. That's too granular, or not enough fine tuning. But I think around here, half a second will be plenty, so we'll make it That's in hundredths of a second, so that's 51 hundredths. Now we're also going to have to go back, and we need to latch this, and we're going to use the enable signal for the timer to latch it. So this will be going to use the enable signal, and for our actual second box bit is we're going to use just the we're going to use the timer timing signal, and that'll be for our second box. And somewhere one of our initial binary bits was for the second box. There it is. Okay, so now we've got our second box, and we're pretty much done, except we've got to add one more rung here, and that rung will be when our timer actually times out. And that's when that times out and that's done, that is going to be our end of the whole process for loading that. So we'll send that through a one-shot again. And let's see, what do we have? Send it through a bit, and that output is going to be our end of cycle, and I think we have that on 15. I always like putting the end of cycle on a very last one of the last output bits, bit 15, so I know where to find it fairly easily. And the other thing we have to do here is in parallel, once we do our end of cycle again is going to reset the removers, but we also have to reset our counter, our timer, because right now our timer is kind of latched up. So we're going to make that T4.0, and I think that ought to do it for our code. Now, you know, when you go through this, except for the very first part where it's a little bit different, you know, for where we're setting up the emitter, and especially when we get that first box with the push button thing. But if you look, and box height is a little different, but as you look at all these signals, you know, they're the same, and you can just copy and paste, and you get pretty good with the Control-C, Control-V, and all you have to do is change the names from right to left. Left and right are the same, just the names have changed. And then you put what interrupts your circuit. For instance, when we're doing the conveyor, the signal that interrupts it is going to be the done pulse. And that's when the box actually disappears. That cuts off our conveyor. And then the remover, that's going to be the end of cycle. So all you have to do is set these up, and you've got it. So let's see, we shall just go in here and verify the projects. Okay, so we've got no errors. We're going to download it into our machine, and once we do this, we're going to take a little break, and we're going to actually see what it looks like on the factory I/O. So take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to set up the factory I/O and take a look at that. And as soon as I get in run mode, and the PLC can be running, and that'll be fine for when we set up the factory I/O, so there's no big deal there. So next time out, we'll be looking at the actual running of it and see how it works and if it works.